Hey, this podcast is sponsored by Anchor, the easiest free way to make a podcast, and how I made this podcast. Creation tools let me record and edit from my phone or computer, and Anchor distributes my shows on Apple, Spotify, and more. Earn money from your show with no minimum listenership. Anchor's all I need to make a show, and hey, if I'm going to stick an ad on here, I'm going to make it something I support. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
On the day before, or immediate days after a mass shooting or other tragic events on a catastrophic scale, quite often were suspicious winning combinations from that state's lottery. And even more disturbing were references to September 11, 2001, such as numbers 911 as an emergency would appear on the lottery game. 3 zeros would emerge, as in ground zero, and other conspicuous results.
That's Harold Rosen, author of Lottery Corruption, USA. Harold's worked on a consulting capacity with the government and was a member of several law enforcement committees. He believes the lottery is being illegally manipulated and controlled. Come along with me to explore his fascinating theories and evidence in an episode that may challenge your perceptions of what it means to be mindful regarding the world around you and how it operates. This minimalist wants more. The Enough-ism podcast is about having enough already. For more, visit IamEnough-ism.com. Hello and welcome to the Enough-ism podcast. I'm here with Harold Rosen. You believe the American lottery system is being manipulated and that winning is not about luck. It's more about illegal governmental control. And I wanted to chat with you about this because the Enough-ism podcast is about challenging your perceptions and being mindful about the world around you. So on that note, let's dive in.
Thank you for this opportunity to discuss my book, Lottery Corruption, USA, on your podcast show, and to bring this story to the American people. I'll give some background of my involvement, how I got involved in pursuing this activity within many state lotteries. While working in a consulting capacity with the government, being a member of law enforcement committees, I came upon all this data associated with lotteries and tragic events and airline accidents and school threats that I was in a unique situation where my conscience took precedence as to what direction my life should pursue this. I've done extensive research on substance abuse, youth violence, and the state lotteries. It appeared that there were suspicious patterns from many state lotteries directly associated with mass shootings and other tragic events. Allow me to elaborate on that. On the day before, or immediate days after a mass shooting or other tragic events on a catastrophic scale, quite often were suspicious winning combinations from that state's lottery. And even more disturbing were references to September 11, 2001, such as numbers 911 as an emergency would appear on the lottery game. 3 zeros would emerge in that state's lottery game, as in ground zero, and other conspicuous results. Many of your listening audience might remember the infamous winning lottery numbers 911 that occurred September 11, 2002, exactly 1 year after the terrorist attacks on the Twin Towers in New York City. When that lottery result occurred, it was very strange that there was no investigation. It was then obvious to me and to most Americans that President George W. Bush had influenced that outcome. I perceive that to be a gesture of some sort by the president to compensate the people of New York, who suffered from the terrorist attacks. Obviously, the president had to establish a relationship of mutual understanding with the lottery equipment companies in order to have that 911 result happen. And it is from that moment on, we learn of the ability of the president to have full access to the state lottery programs and to manipulate them upon his request. Even years prior to September 11, 2001, there were also lottery results associated with catastrophic tragedies that had been occurring. And it's the consistency over many years of this questionable activity that warrants an investigation. As we know, at the time of 2001, just after the terrorist attacks, United States went to war with Afghanistan and Iraq, and that was costing billions of dollars each year. And that was one of the reasons why the lotteries are being corrupted, to deter any terrorists from winning the lotteries. As we know, the state lotteries provide a significant source of revenue for the states. So there is a possible reason why the president established this covert policy within the government, unbeknownst to all the Americans. Still, it is unjustified that the president is tapping into lottery programs and also putting people who play the lotteries at a disadvantage if they know that certain games are going to be manipulated. So lotteries have been defrauding the people ever since 2001, at least since then. And I feel that that's unjust to the people. And also, a lot of people have been victims of these terrorist attacks. I'll call them terrorist attacks within the United States, such as these mass shootings. I'll elaborate on that. In 2017, the former information security director for the Multi-State Lottery Association, which oversees the Powerball games, and it used to oversee also the Hot Lotto, which was a 5-number game. Information security director, again, for that organization, he confessed to manipulating the software he designed, allowing him to provide winning numbers to his brother and friends. So he was entrusted to oversee that safe and honest lottery games would be maintained, and he violated that public trust. But when he gave testimony at his trial, he insisted the lottery system remained still fatally flawed. Now, knowing that, there was a degree of probability that he also might have knowledge of other lottery games, again, still being manipulated. From my analysis of all the data I researched, I am encouraged to believe these conspirators are working on a national level, influencing the media, that is TV, movies, music, video games, etc., with subliminal messages, which are words or pictures presented in such a way that we don't consciously notice them. A lot of mass shootings, that I include in my book were associated with suspicious patterns of lottery results. Those suspicious patterns of lottery results also consistently were referencing September 11, 2001, which means that a lot of numbers 911 would emerge in the results, either the day of the tragedy, day before, or the day after the tragedy, such as a mass shooting. Now, these subliminal messages, and the purpose of subliminal messages is to influence the audience, without them consciously knowing what they are hearing in their subconscious, where 1/100th of a second, the word Coca-Cola would appear, and you don't hear it that audibly, but your conscious mind would hear it or would see it if it flashes on the screen very, very quickly. Now, the purpose of that subliminal message of having the Coca-Cola on the screen for a 30th of a second or so would try to influence the moviegoers at the movie theater to go to the snack bar and buy a Coca-Cola. Now, these subliminal messages, I believe, are incorporated into a lot of music that is being produced over the years. It could be in commercial advertisements on the TV. It could be in movies or video games, which a lot of people have been complaining about, that there's too much violence in the music and also the video games. Now, our decisions and our behavior can be influenced without our knowledge or control through subliminal messages. These conspirators appear to be targeting specific individuals who are more susceptible to committing acts of violence if they have a mental illness or they have a bad relationship with their employer or some instance like that. Keep in mind that if they are able to achieve their goal, which is to have a specific person commit an act of violence, they will in turn have the lotteries of that state where that incident might occur to have those lottery numbers at their advantage, such as 911 to come up either the day before or the day after, because this is all pre-planned and premeditated so they can profit from the lotteries and to inflict serious harm on human life.
One question that I have when you were speaking, you emphasized the importance of timing. So 1 year after 9/11, or the numbers appearing the day before, the day of, or the day after an event. I'm curious about that in particular and what you think the connection is there between the timing of something and when it occurs.
That's a good question, and it's a very important question, because it not only means are the lotteries being manipulated, but this is a very sophisticated operation where these conspirators are planning all this in advance, where they know they can manipulate a person's behavior by incorporating malicious subliminal messages, okay, for that person to behave in a negative and violent manner. And knowing that they are targeting this specific person, they will also incorporate something or hack into that lottery system. And just to give a little information, if the military, if the Pentagon computers can be hacked into, these hackers can probably get into almost anything if they really want to. So we have to think realistically that these lotteries are being manipulated and for malicious intent, not only to profit from the lottery again, but to inflict serious harm on human lives. And the purpose of my book is not only to provide this information to the public, but to mobilize cities into networking together to question the validity of the state-run lottery programs. There is a Freedom of Information Act, which is a federal Freedom of Information law, which allows the public to question any federal documents that have been classified and to keep the government on its mettle to make sure that they are performing their functions as elected officials in an honest manner.
Yeah.
Now, the 2001 incident of September 11, 2001, again, when that tragedy occurred a year later, as I mentioned early in our interview, the numbers 911 came up in the New York lottery. Now, in the California lottery, a year before 2001, that is September 11, 2000, from the California lottery, triple zeros came in the exact year prior to the terrorist attacks. And a day before that, September 10, 2000, from the California lottery, numbers 191 came in. So we look at this and we say, this looks suspicious. But when we think of it, we're saying also, being that this was a year before the terrorist attacks, we say to ourselves now, could these have been clues as to the impending danger of September 11, 2001? Now, talking about the current lottery games and the system. In Queens just last week, September 1st, there was a mass shooting where 10 people got injured from these perpetrators that got off these motorcycles or little motor scooters with wearing masks, and they just shot up the crowd. So 10 people were injured in New York. And on that day, August 1st, in the New York lottery, numbers 9119 were the winning results of that Play 4 game. So we see, my theory is we just can't be naive to think that these are mere coincidences. Again, what I'm trying to emphasize to the general public is be aware of the lottery results and these mass shootings and these catastrophic tragedies that are occurring. And we have to sort of monitor them and try to get the government to stop this. We could be saving lives, innocent lives, and we just must not be passive about this activity that is happening for decades now.
I'm curious what the purpose of the manipulation is for the greater general public. I don't know if you have any insight into that.
Since the lottery games, the Play 3 games and the Play 4 games used to be manually, where there was no computers involved. But since almost all of these lottery games are now computerized, where they choose the numbers with a computer software program, for each game, or there's some sort of microchips and sensors inside the physical devices that chooses the ping pong ball or the tennis ball. But these suspicious patterns of lottery results, again, that emerge during tragic times. This is happening so consistently that we really have to sort of try to do something about it and discuss this on each state level and then on a national level. The incident at the Sandy Hook Elementary School, which happened September 14th, 2012, where many young elementary school students were literally gunned down. And the day of that tragedy, it happened in Connecticut. The day of that tragedy, in the lottery game, it was a Play 5 game, numbers 9 and 11 appeared in that game on that day. And the day before, it was December 14th, 2012, where numbers 1, 4, and 2, 1. So 1, 4 is the 14th day, and the 2 and 1 are the 12th year. And also that result occurred the day before. And that happened 2012. And another sort of factoid to this specific incident was George Washington, our nation's first president, died on December 14th, exactly 213 years prior to that.
Yeah, and my last question is, what do we do with all this information? What's next?
Thank you. I am on LinkedIn, Harold Rosen, looking to collaborate not only with people in the general public, parents, could be elected officials, it could be law enforcement at any level.
I commend you for sharing your thoughts and explaining the theories in your book and the evidence to support it, and for being bold and taking a stance on a topic that is difficult for many people to understand. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. And you are now giving hope with this podcast to many people.
You've reached the end of the Enough-ism podcast. I'm your host, Yugen Bond. I'm a metaphysical author and have an ebook called Enough-ism, This Minimalist Wants More, now on Amazon, featuring interviews and musings on meditation, yoga, and mindfulness. Thanks for listening, and remember, you're always enough, just the way you are.